Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jeremy Derryberry. I'm one of the directors here at Everest. With me tonight is Linda Hitchcock, our college counselor, and we're here to talk to you about building a college list and visiting colleges. Our goal for tonight is to teach you sort of the core ways of looking at the college list, ways to think about the colleges that you're reviewing, and ways of capturing that information, and helping you work towards, hopefully this time next year, if you're a junior, having a solid college choice to attend. So we'll break tonight up into two parts. Linda will talk for probably about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. Many of you have submitted questions ahead of time. We'll try to get to those at the end if we haven't built it into the presentation already. And then we'll open up the floor to anybody's questions if you have stuff that comes up during the presentation. Feel free to enter that question into the chat ahead of time if possible. Otherwise, feel free to raise it at the end. We are recording tonight, so tomorrow I will send you a copy of the recording along with the presentation and all the supporting materials that we talk about. And that should go out tomorrow afternoon. Before we move ahead, just want to let you know that coming up, we have our college application workshops in August. This is a one-week workshop where the students come in and work with Linda on every aspect of the application process. From the list all the way to, dotting the last I's on the essays. We do have an early bird special going on that right now through the end of March. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to me. We'll get you set up. If you are a sophomore, I do want to encourage you to take your diagnostic ACT and SAT right now. We'll be having a lot of breaks, a lot of dates during March and spring break and then into the summer. It's a good time to get your test settled as which test you'll be using for the admissions test next year. So I encourage you to reach out and sign up for that. And then finally, if you're a junior and you haven't done your admissions test already, we do have a lot of classes starting in April and June for ACT and SAT. So if you haven't done your admissions test, we would encourage you to get that done probably in the spring or early summer. With that, I'll turn it over to Linda. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good evening, everybody. As Jeremy told you, my name is Linda Hitchcock. I have been a college counselor for a long time. Before I started helping students, I was a reader for Clemson University. And then I started doing college counseling at Rockville High School. And then I moved to Wooten High School. And then as I retired from Wooten, I didn't want to give it up because I love it so much. So I came on board with Everest, and I've been there for years. So just a little bit of background about me. So tonight, we're going to just talk about different lists and how to get to those different lists, because every student is really different. So tonight I'm going to focus on, getting to find out what colleges are looking for, but also how to build that list to make it, make the list start from the start and to the end when they actually start applying. Okay, so we'll get started here. All right. So let's talk about what schools should be on the list first of all, okay? Because everybody sits down with a piece of paper and a pen and they go, okay, well, I've heard of this school, so let me just put it on the list. Or, my friend goes to this school, I've heard it's great, let me put that on the list. So that's really probably not the best way to start the list, because everybody is different. So I would tell everyone, when you sit down to start the list, the big thing is doing your research before you actually make the list. So find out what you think you might want to major in. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit more. I am finding this past year, that going in undecided to every school may not be the best way to go. So it's a good thing to kind of have an idea. And if your child is taking lots of humanities courses, then I would look at the humanities world and all of those majors. If your student is taking a lot of sciences and math, then probably look towards that. And again, the computer science or the engineering. So if they're taking those types of classes, then that kind of gives you an indication of what they like to do. And again, that all changes, but just to get started, that would be something to look at. And then I will tell you the very first thing that needs to be on the list is affordability. And that's what's on this slide, because if you make a list of all schools that are extremely expensive and your child or you are not willing to go into that type of debt, then don't put them on the list, because when you do and then you get into them and your son or daughter gets into those schools and they're going to accumulate a lot of debt, or you are, which you're unhappy about, then that school, you've just wasted your time filling out all of that application. But it's also very disappointing because that child might have fallen in love with that school, and now we're telling them or we're expecting them to pay this amount of money. We can talk about scholarships, but I will tell you that there are very few full rides. So when I talk to parents, they're like, yeah, but they're going to get a lot of merit scholarship. There are plenty of schools out there that offer zero merit scholarship. So don't count on that, because you don't know what's going on at the school. Student athletes are a different story, but we again talk about that later. But one of the very first things that you need to talk about is finances. Okay. And that should be the first thing that you look out for list. And then the career and everything based on their record. And we'll get into GPA, because some GPAs might change, and we'll talk about how we get there to the GPA, but it's going to also depend upon that as well, and test scores. So don't add schools on there that your child goes, I'm never going to go to that school, or don't add schools on there just because Aunt Sally went there and she loved the school. Well, that might have been really great for her, but not good for your child. So kind of think about that before you just automatically add them to a list. All right, let's move on. So we talked about this. What influences that list? Very, very much the GPA, grade point average of where your child is. So for juniors that are, they have received their report cards and their first semester grades. So that's a good indication of where they sit with their GPA. And remember, we're talking cumulative GPA. So we're talking ninth grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. So they're not quite finished. So some students' GPA might go up. Hopefully they don't go down. But you're talking cumulative. So if you want to know, and that's not what's on the report card. So when you look at a report card, it's not going to give you all of the years together. It's only going to give you that specific year. So if you want to know your child's cumulative GPA, talk to your counselor, to have your son or daughter talk to your counselor and get a copy of their unofficial transcript. That will show you what their cumulative GPA thus far. So, and again, they're still in their second half of their junior year. And I will tell you, if you are sitting in my, waiting room or sitting on the Zoom call and you have a junior, you need to tell them that this semester is it, because once the students submit their applications, that's what they're seeing their junior year. So their junior year, they need to finish strong. So if they're in a class that they're not doing well in, they either need tutoring or you think about getting them out of that class. But this schedule and their GPA from the end of their junior year is what colleges are going to see. So that's important. And if you've got a sophomore that is coming up and you're looking, in advance, just make sure that you know what their grades are and how they're doing in their classes. Because again, GPA is one of the first things they look at. It's the biggest influence of the list and how to make the list. They are going to look at that. The next thing is test scores. And this is a ongoing conversation with many families that I talk to. However, I will tell you out of experience that the past 2 years, they are really looking at test scores. And even though they say they're optional, you have to remember what optional means. And if you are looking at, let's just say, 50,000 applications that come through their door and 40,000 of them have test scores and only 10,000 don't, then not a great idea if your child went in as test optional. So think about that before you decide no test, because they're looking at them. And it's almost more important to send them than it is not to send them. And there are differences between what schools accept test and there's not. And if you have questions about that, but there are test blind schools that definitely never will look at a test score. And then there's the optional, and then there's the ones that will look for test scores. So Dartmouth just announced that they are putting the test policy back into sorry, I can't talk, back into their requirements. And I am thinking, and all of the, I guess the word in the college world on my world end is a lot of schools are looking to do that as well. So again, the test scores are becoming more important than they had been. Their activities are important. How their activities, the consistency of their activities, those are what they're looking for. They're looking for what kinds of classes, what kind of tool. Those are all types of things that colleges look for. So when you're looking and building that list, I would look at the school's historical trends, your high school's historical trends. So for example, if, 100 300 kids applied to University of Maryland and they're taking 150, then you know what that yield rate is, and that's a historical trend. So if you want to make a list based on that historical trend, you should either look at Naviance, but talk to your school's counselor, because your school's counselor will have the updated list as well. How to build that list, again, looking at informational sources, which would be on their website, which would be on, you can use Niche, you could use their College Board site. There's many, many, many opportunities to look. Naviance is the one that every school in Montgomery County, public school in Montgomery County, uses. So they encourage, and Naviance is a great tool. Go there one place, you can see an enormous amount of information just by using that site. And the next thing that we'll talk about is visiting schools. And when you visit schools, I'll go into more detail in the later slide about what to do when you visit a school, but just know that visiting schools are very important and will have will influence the list completely. Okay, let's see what else. And again, we talked about the debt, how much you want to take on. The other thing that I like to tell families is, if you're looking for a program like possibly getting a master's along with your undergrad, those are 5-year programs and they save families quite a bit of money. And that's something, if your child's really looking at kinesiology or being a nutrition or even being a teacher, there are a lot of 5-year programs out there. So that can also influence the list. So again, geographics, location, many, many, many things that influence that list. All right, and we're going to keep on moving about that. So we talked about their major a little bit. What happens if you don't know? Well, if you don't know, there's ways to find out. You can do a personality test. You can do a lot of different things to find out. But again, if you're taking courses that are leaning towards the humanities, then you probably like the humanities. So is it important? I have to tell you, this year I've found it more so that kids that have applied undecided, colleges are coming back and telling them that they're only allowing so many kids to come in undecided, and do they have a major that they would like to choose? So I've seen that happen this year. So I'm not saying that it's mandatory, but there might be some area that you might want to look at just to see if there's again, based on personality, based on a vocational assessment, which, are out there for free. It might be a good idea to do one of those, just so when you start looking at colleges, you'll know what to select for a major. Okay, just a just something that I've noticed this past year. All right, let's move on. Let's see here. So where do you begin? Well, I just told you the major career, GPA, cost and aid. Aid, again, if you're looking for merit scholarships, you got to look for a school that offers them. Um, Geography. So this is the next area after your major and GPA and cost is where. So does your student want to be far from home? Do they want to be on an airplane every time they want to come home? Do they want to be 3 hours from home? Do they not care? Do they like warm weather? Do they not care? Do they hate the cold weather? Well, if they hate the cold weather, you wouldn't want to send them to Syracuse or, parts of Ohio because they might have a lot of snow. So, and for kids that like that, that's great. But for those that don't, like myself, I don't care for the snow. I would not want to go to college where I have to wear a coat and gloves all day long. So those are important things to think about now before you start going on college visits. Because again, if you're saying, I told my daughter when we were looking at schools, if you look at a school in California, you're going to be staying there for months because I can't afford to fly you back and forth all the time. So if that's a factor in the financial and the cost, then make sure that you don't schools that you can't drive to. So those are things that are important. Again, location, weather, size, that makes a huge difference. Do they want a small school? And we'll talk about those in a minute, but what types of schools are out there? Look at the sports and the extracurriculars. I had a young lady I worked with this year who was a flute player and very unique. She did a lot of different things playing the flute, and she wanted a school that had oh come on a special section for flutes and clarinets. I'm losing my thought, but anyway, parents, you'll know if your child plays the flute or clarinet. But she wanted a special program at that school that could offer her to play her flute, which isn't at every school. So those are things to think about. Clubs that they really want to be in, water polo, just different unique clubs. Would that excite them? Would that make them happy? If you're looking for strictly sorority or fraternity schools, great, look at the list. But if you don't want sorority and fraternities, then that's also important to make sure that you don't go to a school that's 80% sorority fraternity based. So a lot of different things, and that's how you start narrowing it down. Major, GPA, cost, geography, and all the special interests that go into it. That's where you start. Okay. All right. We'll move on. And again, different types of schools. So a liberal arts school is going to be very different than a big university. A liberal arts schools tend to be smaller. However, there are a lot of universities that have a strong liberal arts school within them. American University is one. So a liberal arts school is very well rounded. They take a math, a science, and English, and a social studies every year. They walk straight into their major. They don't have to take generic classes in the beginning. They walk straight into their major right away. And if they don't know their major, they put them in a special program to help them. But liberal arts tends to be very professor focused and not a lot of teaching assistants. So the students are one-on-one with professors majority of the time, all 4 years. So a very different type of education. 62%, and I just looked this up the other day, 62% of the CEOs in the country went to a liberal arts college. So just a little trivia for you. Of course, universities, some are big, some are large, but the majority of the universities tend to be either a state school or private schools, obviously, or universities, but a lot of them tend to be public or private. A lot of them are research based. So students may have to do a research project before they graduate. Again, something to ask that college. But many universities, research is a huge component, and they want kids to come in and do research. There are specialized schools, like you could do a all boys or all girls, or you could do a religious affiliated school. There's also specialized schools in vocation, which is the next category, and technical. So there, everybody thinks Virginia Tech is only for tech school or only for tech students. I would say probably 45% of it is data science and engineering, which is more the vocational and technical end, but they also have other things. But there are strictly, like Embry-Riddle is nothing but a school for kids to go and do not astrology. Boy, I'm really losing it here tonight. Aerospace. So there are plenty of schools out there that have a specialized focus as well. Lots of choices. And of course, there's a community college. And I'm assuming all of you are from Montgomery County. And of course, we know that Montgomery College is a phenomenal school. So there are community colleges as well. All right. Let's keep on going. Okay. School factors to consider. Again, we keep talking about affordability, but I just can't tell you how important it is. The size, location, distance. Here's what I'd like to tell every parent. Make 3 lists, okay? Start out with your first list. This is your search list, and base the search list on all of these factors: type, size, location, distance, affordability. Then that's your search list. Then go on some college visits for that search list, okay? And that search list could be 15 to 20 schools, might be more, but that's probably about an average of a first search list. Then have your child go in off of that search list and do a virtual tour, okay? And take the virtual tour and see what they like. If they get a really good feeling about the virtual tour, then put that on the list to go visit. If they don't, they look at it and they go, I don't know about that, or it doesn't look exactly like what I want. Okay, put that on the, okay, we'll not visit, but we'll keep it on the list because it's based on GPA and all of those other factors. But that's the list to start out with. The search list is based on all these factors, and that's your first list, is the search one. And then you want to make sure that when you visit, there's a lot of things, and we'll talk about what to do when you visit, but these are all things. This is a great slide to show you. Special criteria, sports offerings, career services. When you go visit the college, I tell families, please go to the Career Center or talk about the Career Center. Is there one? How do they help your child? Do they help your student make a resume when they get to be a junior or a senior and out there looking for jobs? Does the school offer internships? Is there a Career Center person that does that? All of these things are so important, especially when you're paying a price to go to a college. You want all of these, these benefits for your child. And that's one of them. I will tell you, one of the most important. Physical health. What happens if your child is in Florida and, is feeling very lonely and upset and depressed? Well, do they have services for that? You probably would want to know that as well. All of the extracurricular offerings, you'll find that every school has everything to offer, if not more. And that's the first thing they'll show you too, is the big gym and the climbing wall, and they are proud to show you in the cafeteria where they have 50 different selections. That's what they'll show you on the list on your tour. But again, a lot of things to look for other than that. So when you're narrowing down that list, that tour is going to be really important to see how much that school is going to help you. Does that school even offer merit scholarships? Where do they feel about financial help? All of those things. If your child has a 504 or an IEP, and if I'm speaking to you and you know what those terms are, then you would want to make sure those services are there for your student. And if they're not, then maybe that's not the right school. Take it off the list. You know, religious affiliate, is that important? Is that important for your child or you as a parent? Look at that. The other thing that I tell families all the time, please, please, please look at the town, look at the safety. Is it safe? Is it in the middle of a crime zone? Would that matter to you? Would that matter to your child? Um, some of the best schools I know are in the worst neighborhoods in the world. So it's something that you as a parent and your child have to make a decision about, but you need to look. Like, is there transportation to get to an airport or to get to a town? Is it in the middle of nowhere? All of these things make a huge difference when you start to narrow down that list. But going on college visits is a very important part of narrowing down that list. Also, it shows a school demonstrated interest. So if that's a school that's really highly ranked on the list, make sure you try to go, because demonstrated interest, when a school is getting 50, 60, 70,000 applications, demonstrated interest means a lot. A school may not tell you that up front because they kind of can't, but I will tell you, as a college counselor, I know that they look at that and they track it. So just something to think about. There's another point on the slide that I want to talk about is high school courses. So there are some schools, South Carolina is some, that you have to have lab science. So it's a requirement. Some of the schools, if you're going into engineering, they require physics. So a lot of these schools, and if you're getting into the arts and the any type of singing, acting, any type of that type of thing, there are requirements of what they need to do. There are portfolios, there are interviews, there are many different things. So again, something else to consider when you're starting to look at colleges and see, what is involved with this, and can I get in, or do I need to change my schedule because now all of a sudden I need another lab science. So things to think about, go into the college's requirements and they will tell you. Most of the time it's the core classes they're looking for, but if it's a specific program and they're looking for that major, or they're looking for a specific thing for that major, make sure you have it now before your child starts their senior year, because once they're in it and they've applied to the school and now all of a sudden they realize they haven't met that requirement, then it ends up going off the list. So do the homework now. Okay. All right, let's move on. Okay. All right. So this is what I was talking about. You're going to have your search list first, okay, based on that criteria. Next, once you get your test scores and your final GPA, okay, because their GPA they're not going to get until the end of June. Well, really, they'll probably get it the middle part of June, depending upon their school, but they'll know their GPA. So once you get that information, that's when to make the target list, okay? And that's making a target list based on, well, they probably will get in based on their GPA and test score, or, well, it's a target, it's a range, it's a possible, it's not a guarantee, it's a possible. And then you've got the total reach, which are unlikelies, which I've talked to kids and I've said, it's great to have unlikelies or reaches on your list, and it's great. Everybody should have at least two. But when you start talking to have 5, 6, 7 reach schools and only 2 safety schools, you're not leaving a lot in between, because what happens if they don't get into any of their reach schools and only get into safety schools, and they don't love them. They'll go there, but they don't love them. Well, that's sometimes disappointing for children and for families. So when you're looking at a list, you have to be realistic about that list. And I really, really try to sit down with my students and say to them, we really have to understand this really is a reach school. Am I telling you you won't get in? No, I'm not telling you you won't. I'm telling you based on their historical tendencies and trends, this is a reach school. And I show them that. I show them what their average GPA is, what their average SAT or ACT scores are, how many students they accept. So those are things that I try to show the student as much as I can based on the information that I have to show that it's a reach. It's possibly very unlikely that you might get in. But again, I've been proven wrong. So, there's a an exception to every rule, but this is how we have a balanced list. And that list should be your number two list, is have that balanced list between the search list and the balanced list. That's your number two. So we got number one is your search, number two is your balanced list, and number three is your final application list. And this final application list might not even happen until you start applying to schools in August and September. So you might find out that we put them on the list, and then in the middle of the process in October and November, they realize they have to fill out 2 or 3 extra essays, and they really didn't love the school. So now all of a sudden, why are we going to fill out all of these extra essays when they didn't even love the school? So they come off that list. So and these lists will fluctuate all through the process between searching, visiting, test scores, and final GPA, and then actually applying. Because again, when you start getting colleges, and this is another trend that I am seeing, there are a lot of colleges that are requiring even more essays. And the reason they're doing that is, once again, they're getting thousands of applications and they need to narrow that down. So how do they narrow it down? By putting an extra essay in there. And that means that that student is writing that essay and taking the time to write that essay and making a good essay. Then that means they're interested in that school. And then that college will look at them and say, thank you for answering the question appropriately and with thought, and, you know, answering the prompt is what I'm trying to say. But don't rush through it. And that's why a balanced list is important, because how many essays can a child write between August, because they don't come out until August. The college essays for individual colleges do not come out until August, and they will never tell you how many is on there. You can Google it till the cows come home, and I will tell you that they will never tell you until that application opens on August 1st that how many they have. So again, that's why lists change. That's why I find number one, number two, and number three. All right, let's keep moving on. Okay. How many schools? This is a great question. Great question. In the search list, you could have up to 20, 25. And that's in the spring. And then after you go see a few, and again, you could go see some over the weekend, you could go see some over spring break, a long weekend. There's times that you can go. I believe that Montgomery County gives students in the public schools, I know they give them 3 days of excused absences to see colleges for juniors. I don't think they give anything to sophomores, but in the fall, in the spring of their junior year, I believe they give them 3. But double check that, because every school is different. But again, in the spring, you could have 20, 25. Again, that number two list, we're breaking it down, and that could be that 10 to 20. And then the fall is your number three list, and that could be 6 to 15. I really discourage students to apply to even 15 schools. I just think that's a lot. It's a lot of money for application fees. It's a lot of work. It just really depends upon the child, but 15 is a lot. And I like to say anywhere between, I'd say 10 is a good average range, and up to 15. But I don't think over 15 is necessary if you do your research and if you visit the schools and you do a lot of research online and start taking schools off the list based on what your child wants and what you want and money and all of those other factors. So how many is truly up to the student, but when you start talking about applying to 20, 25 schools, it's an enormous amount of work. All right. Okay. Very important. When I work with students, I always like to, and we can send this out to you as well in the information. But I like to send a list of what students should look for, questions to ask, college visits when they're on college visits. Again, specific things. But when you go to a school, you make sure you make notes about it in the phone or take pictures or bring home a newspaper or lots of information and keep track of it. Keep yourself organized. I give my kids, when I work with them in the college application class workshop, I give my kids a binder and I encourage them to keep track of everything, because when you start going to 10, 11, 12 schools, after a while, it all kinds of meshes together and you can't remember anything. So make sure you take pictures, you write down things that you absolutely loved, you write down things about the neighborhood, you write down things about what you saw on campus. And even if you go and you visit the campus and there are no students on campus, you can still get a pretty good feel of what the school is like. And if they apply and they get in, then go back when students are there. But make sure you keep track of things. If you were on a college visit and your child absolutely fell in love with that school, or the tour guide gave a great tour, make sure your child sends them a nice thank you note. Thank you so much for taking your time, or whatever the case was. And mom and dad, you can do the same thing. I've had parents say, send it to the general admissions office and say, we brought our daughter here. It was one of the best presentations we've seen. Thank you so much. Will that help your child get in? No, but it does help the school know that you listened and how they can make their presentations better. Same thing with if it was not good. I've had parents send that too. But again, if it's a school your child wants to go to and they didn't have a great visit, then I probably wouldn't be sending anything, but that's just me. But keep track of it and know where you've gone. Write it down, because it really does make a difference. Because I've talked to kids before and they'll go, yeah, I visited that school, but I don't remember anything. So important to remember things and write it down and talk to your child. And look, I know I've been through this process with my own children. I've watched parents with their own children. And when you go on these college visits, you expect your child to ask every question and get involved and tell you how much they love it. And if they don't, it's okay, because some kids are still thinking about this and they're not real sure yet what to say. They're kind of shy when they might go on a college visit and they're not real sure. They're just taking it all in. So moms and dads, if they don't talk about it, and you are starting asking them questions and you're getting kickback, then don't ask, because it's just going to make the process even harder. So again, I've been doing this a long time, and I just will tell you that it's an exciting time for parents, because you're going on college visits and your child's getting ready to go to college, and it's so much fun to go with them. But on the other hand, you might go and it turns out to be a nightmare. So just know that when you're going in, that you kind of take your child's lead on this and see how they do. And again, I've seen kids go in and it's the best time. And then, as I've told you, my own daughter just sat there with her hand and never said a word. And of course, I got to the car and I was like, why didn't you ask anything? And then, of course, it started this huge fight. So I'm just telling you that sometimes that happens, mom and dad, and don't take it personally. It's just part of the process. Okay. What else do we have? Resources, and we'll send this out to you. So I talked about Naviance, and your child has a Naviance account. I assure you they do. So if they're not sure they do, they need to go talk to their counselor. Every high school, every public high school in Montgomery County, PG County, Howard County, they all use it. They all use it to send transcripts to schools and for letters of recommendation. So they have it, and Naviance is a great tool. The U.S. Department of Education website is another great tool. So there is something called the Common Data Set, which is a tool I use all the time, and every college has one. So if you Google it, it's called a Common Data Set. And if you want to get to it easily, just look at applicants admission information. It's called freshman admissions. Every school calls it something different, but it will tell you how many students applied, how many they accepted, how many went on wait list, how many they accepted off the wait list, what their average GPAs were, how much money they gave in scholarship, if they gave any, how many loans they offered to people. It tells you everything. So it's a great tool. There's search engines, like I said, there's plenty of them out there. There's a couple of them I really like that we put on the list. You can use the US News and World Report rankings, but when you use those rankings, you have to understand that those rankings are based on test scores, and they are based on a reflection from a professor. So a professor sends in their information and says, yes, we teach this, and yes, it's so many classes are taught, and that all gets factored in to the rankings. So be sure you read the byline of how the rankings were made, because if they're made off test scores and professors, then I'm not real sure I believe all of those rankings, because obviously if they're doing it on test scores and GPA, then we all know that Harvard's and or Princeton's and Yale's are all going to be number one. So again, those rankings are good and they're bad. You just have to read how they make those rankings. If the student does college visits at their school, maybe they really learned something about a college when they came in to visit. There's college fairs. I believe they're coming back with the college fair at Montgomery County. At least that's what I've been told. So hopefully your child will be able to go to that college fair. It's put on by the National Association of College and Career Counselors. So it's a great college fair for your child to go and to pick up information. Of course, teachers and high school counselors, those are all personal opinions, and you can talk to your coach. Lots of tour guides when you go on tour guides. There's lots of ways. Sometimes there's a neighbor that they go to a certain school and your child's interested in that school, then have the neighbor come down and tell them all the pros and the cons. So there's lots of ways to research. Much more than I was when I started to look at schools. But it's out there. You just have to know what you're looking at, because everybody's a little biased when they do rankings. So just remember that when you're looking at a ranking. There's regional rankings, which I find are very helpful, because those are schools that may be under the radar. They're not in the name brand list, but they're in the regional list, and they're great reviews for regional lists. So don't miss those, because they really do help as well. So, and we'll send that out, a list of resources for you after tomorrow. I believe that Jeremy will put it out with the link for the this tonight's talk. And again, I don't know why I'm losing my train of thought there, but okay, we'll move on. All right, so make a plan. Oh, good. I didn't know this number. It's 163 days before the Common Application goes live on August 1st. Well, that makes it really great to think about. Don't let that scare you, families. Don't let it scare you. 235 days. Am I reading this right? Jeremy did this great slide. 235 days. Most early decision and early action applications are due by November 1st. So just think, we have 235 days before submitting an application. Current juniors will be finalizing their school list, their school choice this time next year. So yes, absolutely. They will, by this time next year, they will have applications that have been accepted, and you'll start looking at where they've been accepted, and what's going to happen when they become a college student. This is an exciting time of year. A lot of kids hear back from schools, and when they hear yeses and nos, it's sometimes depressing, but it's also exciting as well. Now's the time to plan. If you're going on spring break, and you need to take an airplane, you probably want to get on that. If you're planning a road trip, then map out where the schools are and try to hit as many as you can. take the Northeast corridor, or if you're going, to Michigan and Ohio, take that corridor. But however you're doing, you want to map it out to make sure that you have enough time to get there and that you can take the tour. If for some reason, and this is kind of a tip that I will give you, but don't tell anybody where you heard this, but you do want to go on their website and try to sign up for a tour, because they are helpful, and you do want to take the school tour. But if they say their list is full, then find out when the tour is, like a 1 o'clock, 10 or 1 or 2 or whatever it is, and get to that school about 20 minutes beforehand. They always save space for walk-ins. So just remember that. They're not going to save space for, 100 walk-ins. But if you got there close to the time, there are people that don't show, and there's probably room on that wait list for you to go. So don't say I can't go because they don't have a space for me. Put it on your list. I wouldn't fly out there to do that. I wouldn't fly somewhere and do that. But if you're driving somewhere and you can get to that school within that time period of their talk, their gosh, Linda, I'm so sorry, everybody, to their their tour, then get there and do that. But again, I wouldn't fly somewhere just to do that. That would not be a good idea. I would hate for you to spend that kind of money and then get out there and find out they're not going to take you. So, but that's just a trick that I've learned over the years of doing college visits on my own. And again, I would try to make as many reservations as you can, and make that trip work. How many can you get in a day? Depends upon how close they are, depends upon how long the tour is. I will also tell you that sometimes you may set up a tour and your child might get there and get out of the car and look around and go, I'm not going to this school, never mind. And then you don't take the tour. Or you force them to take the tour, one of the two. But sometimes that happens. And if that happens, then you move on to the next school and go see it. So it just really depends. This is a whole learning experience for you and your child. And again, enjoy it. Sometimes I find that it's harder than you think sometimes, but you can make it a great time. Go visit the little town that it's in, or go find a place that the locals are talking about to eat, or ask the college kids, where's a great place to eat, or, make sure you survey the town, because again, or the area, because this is where your child's going to be for 4 years of their life. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with it, they're comfortable with it, and again, make the time and tell them why it's important to look at all these things. They may not think it is, but at the end of the day, when you start narrowing down that list again after the search list, this is when all those things start coming off the list, because they didn't like the area, or it was, it was too crowded, or whatever the reasoning is. That's how you know to take them off the list. So I hope that answered some of your questions. I think there were some in the chat room that I might not have gotten to, but if you have any more, and I know that was a quick presentation, but I like to do that so I'm able to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So just remember, there are 3 types of lists: your search, your test scores, your GPA, after you have all of that finished. And then your final list is in August, when you start making your application list. And that's the list of when you want to know exactly which schools you're going to apply to. So, and again, if you need help with making a list, I'm happy to do it with you by Zoom or in person. I also work with clients privately, or again, I can talk about my class all day long. I love teaching it. I think it gets the kids a lot, so they're not as stressed out. So just a little bit about how to make a list, but we're here to help you in any way we can. All right, Jeremy, I'll let you take those questions. I read some of them. Okay.
We still had a couple of slides left, Linda. I'm sorry.
Oh, we do? I'm sorry.
That's
Okay,
okay.
keep going. Did I miss everything? Okay. All right. Okay, Jeremy, I'm ready.
Okay, yeah, I moved ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the college visits bring reality. Definitely go in person. And there are different tours. There are a lot of colleges do come to hotels in the spring. And some do in the summer, not as much, but in the spring they will come to a hotel. So if you get on their mailing list, then that's an easy way to find out where they'll be. And if they're coming to the high school, they're going to the college, um, uh, the college tour that's at Montgomery County Fairgrounds. Um, so there's a lot of ways to find out. I would, again, for that search list, I would recommend when it's on their search list to go in and put their name in that college as a prospective student, so they get on that wait list or on that mailing list, so you get all of that information. Okay. Did I miss anything, Jeremy? I apologize. Okay. And when is important to go? Um, I would probably, again, school, I would not go in May. Colleges are very busy with graduation. Some colleges don't even do college visits during May. So I probably would not go. Other than that, I still say it's important to go even if it is in the summer. But again, try to plan those visits so you can see as many as you can at one time. Do all your local visits during the weekends. And then again, all of those factors about traveling is going to be during that research list. So if you're only going to schools that are within the 3-hour time period, you could do a lot of them on weekends. Now, okay. All right. And then, oh, this is important. And I will send that. I'll have Jeremy send this out with a list of questions that your child or you should ask. And I call it the college tour questionnaire. So it has a lot of really good things on that questionnaire. And again, your child might look at it and go, I'm not asking that question. So you can, nonchalantly ask another student a question. But I find that a lot of these questions are helpful when they start narrowing down their list. So we'll send that out to you as well. Okay. All right. Yep. I think I covered that. Building a network, use your initial contacts. Um, there is always a regional representative or a local representative, and that's who's going to read their application. So that's important for your child to know who they are, and to send them, a thank you note, especially if they've seen them at the high school or they've seen them at the college visit. It's real important to keep in contact with them. If your child's going after a specific major or engineering, and they took a tour in the engineering school and they met the director of engineering, great opportunity to send them a note. Many different, and again, if you have a question regarding that, send it my way. I'll happy to answer it for you. But the more information that your child can learn about the school and the school can learn about your child, the better off you're going to be. If it's in athletics, it's a whole different avenue because it's based on coaches. And that's a whole different talk that I could have, is based on athletic recruitment. So if that's information you want to know, then that's something separately I could talk to you about. But it's too difficult to go into all the scenarios of different types of connections that your child would have. But most of them are right there on that slide. The admissions office rep. Sometimes, to be truthful with you, sometimes admission officers change throughout the year. They may be there this year, but not next fall. But when you sit down and do the actual application, you can look up on their website who the actual representative is. So, and when they're in my class, my workshops, we always do that. I have the kids look them up and see who they are so they know who they're writing to and they can keep in contact with them. So sometimes they do change, but for right now and for when you go visit schools, for right now, make sure they know who they're talking to. Get their business cards, pick up their business cards. All right. Yes, debrief and record. And I said that before. Just make sure that you write everything down. And here's the other thing that your children are pretty intuitive. And as I said, some of them will walk on the campus immediately and go, no, I'm not going here. So trust their gut feeling, because if they feel that way when they see it, then I assure you, then nothing's going to change their mind. I know that for personal experience, and I just will tell you it doesn't work. You can try, but in my uh, experience, it doesn't work. They don't like it. They don't like it, and no matter what you do to get them to like it, sometimes they just won't. So they have a gut feeling and an instinct, and sometimes you just got to trust that instinct that they know what they're talking about. And that's what you should listen to, is your gut feeling and their gut feeling. And again, going to schools, that I think probably the biggest thing that I could really tell you is let them know financially if this is a school that's out of your reach, and how you're going to, what kind of debt you're going to have. Because again, if you're telling them, which I did with both of my children, that I had a limit and they still wanted to go see the school, I said to them, we'll go see it, but you have to understand this is your debt that you're carrying. And once we got to one of the schools and my son decided how much debt he was going to be in, he decided right away, take it off the list, Mom, I'm not coming here. So again, that's a really important thing to put in the very beginning on that search list. But keep track of everything. When you do it diligently, have a plan, go after the plan, and know what you're looking at, and make sure that you get as much out of that visit as you possibly can. All right. Am I missing anything? Okay. And I said, enjoy that ride. Like I said, it's fun. Go have a great lunch. I have found the best college towns out there and the best food out there at some of the best college towns. So enjoy yourself. All right. How to factor in undecided majors when searching. That's one of the questions that I'm not sure I answered completely. However, I would try to do some type of personality profile, vocational assessment, just to see if they are if they know what they want. If they really, really don't, then when you visit a school, you need to ask them, do you have an undecided major? How do you look at students that are undecided? Some schools have undecided majors, but they will only take so many students into those undecided majors. Ask, absolutely ask. If your child is not sure, ask the college, because they'll tell you. But there are tools out there to help as well.
Are there any tools you'd suggest for people, Linda?
Any tools? So 16 personalities is a great assessment. There's two other ones on our list, Jeremy, that we send out. I don't have them in front of me, but I know 16 personalities is the one that I really like. So it's free, and it really gives a great, the Naviance one is good as well. But remember, when your child is filling these out, they have to answer the questions truthfully. So I've seen kids just go, well, I don't know about that. And I'm like, what's your gut feeling say? Do you like this or do you not? It's a yes or a no. So just make sure they answer it correctly. If not, you're going to get a weird answer. But I do believe there are some on our resources list, Jeremy, that we send out. Okay. Am I missing other questions? Any other ones?
So one in the chat is, how would you recommend going early decision for Reach School? And what should you consider?
Okay. So that's a great question. I have found this year specifically that kids that are applying early decision I've had kids apply early decision and actually get waitlisted or deferred. So that does happen. And the reason that they get deferred is because they're waiting to see what other applicants come in, but they're also waiting to see how a student does in a specific class. So yes, have I had kids get denied out of early decision? Absolutely. But I will tell you that if they're close to being to that mark, then I'm seeing early decision to be a factor that will help them. If it is a huge reach, it's not helping. Early decision's not helping. But if it is within the, I'd say that probable to possibly unlikely, and again, unlikely if your child has, and I'm not, if a child has a 3.0, a weighted 3.0, and no test scores and they're applying to Harvard, it's a reach, and early decision is not going to make a difference. So it really does depend upon where, how far of a reach it is. But yes, I've seen early decision make a difference. And that means early decision families, that means full pay. They do not have to offer you a penny, a penny. So if you're doing early decision, they will have you send in all of your information based on uh, finances. So some schools will make you fill out what they call a CSS profile, and you must fill that out. So they will base it on finances. So, but if you go in and there is no need whatsoever and money is not an object, I have seen a lot of kids get into those schools. Yes. Does it make a difference? Yes, it could, but it just depends upon how far off that difference is. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Is Is the percentage of applicants who did testing by college available in the common data set or elsewhere?
I'm sorry, repeat that for me.
They're asking if the percentage of people who submitted test scores, is that in the common data set?
Yes, it is. Yes, but again, the common data set is gonna be a year back. So if you're looking for applicants for the 2024 admission class, they're not gonna be there because their common data sets are always a year behind. So yes, they're there. They'll tell you how many test scores they received. Absolutely, it's there.
And you can also find a lot of times schools will release their applicant and admission numbers in the spring, and that will often, they'll break it out and that release as well. So if you search on the school's admission news site, they'll often have that information if it hasn't made
Yeah.
it into the data set yet.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you pick schools if you're going test optional?
Um, it's a good question that a lot of families ask me. How do you pick schools? You would pick schools that are not highly selective, um, because if they okay, like Ohio State. Ohio State has 48,000 kids on their campus. I found that they took a lot of kids that are test optional because they're a huge school and they have to get their numbers to fill their freshman numbers, their yields. So I find that big schools that need that, the students, they will take kids with no score. So that would be something that I would put on the list. I would put schools on the list that are looking for students from our area, but selective schools, it's going to be, it just really, there are going to be a lot of factors in there that I would have to sit down with a student and a family and see what those factors are. To completely answer the question, I can't say yes or no or how to do it, but I will tell you that schools that take a large number, Arizona, Arizona State, Ohio State, Iowa, a lot of schools that have a lot of numbers to fill and they're not selective, that would be how I would start my list for test optional. If you really don't want the test optional and you're not going to submit test scores, then look for schools that are test blind. And that's what I would look for, test blind schools. And that's a whole totally different thing. They never, ever will look at a test score, ever. So look for schools that are test blind.
Have we seen factors like families' earnings in the top 10% of the US get deferred?
Yes, all the time. Yes, very much so. It just really depends upon the school. Um, it's hard to say, but yes, I've seen a lot of deferrals that might not have been, um, a deferral, but yes, they are. There's no perfect prediction. There is a, you know, it's like playing cards. You don't know what they're looking for. You absolutely don't. It's like throwing a dart. And I wish I could tell you. And if I did, I would get paid a lot of money to be in my position to tell you how to get into a certain school, because there is no real answer, and there's nothing that I can predict and to say. I just only say what the trends were in the past and what the trends were for this year and the previous year. So yes, the answer is yes. I've seen it, yes.
Do you have any special tricks for identifying safety schools that kids can get excited about?
Oh, yeah, plenty. So there are some great schools out there that are potentially a safe school for a child. And what I do is when I sit down and here's the thing. Children, I don't care what school they attend, does not matter. They are going to hear from their friends, "Oh, you don't want to go to that school because that's a bad school." And I come back to the kids and say, "Define bad. What do you mean by bad?" "Well, it doesn't have a good reputation." "And how do you know that?" So that's my question would be to a child is, a safety school, and they're going to say, "Well, everybody gets in there." Well, yeah, maybe everybody does, but it could be a perfect school for you. Look at their clubs. Find a club that their child's excited about. Find something unique. Had a young man who we went through schools and schools, and he absolutely loved cars, 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 cars. And they had a Formula One program. They had a race team, that a club that was their Formula One race team. Once we showed him that, man, that was it. He was so excited about that school. So there are ways to find it. I look at clubs first. That's where I look. And then I look at areas and things that are around the area. Because some schools are really close to something the child might really like and enjoy. It depends upon the child. It depends upon the school. But yes, there's ways to make them excited. I promise. Even if it's Montgomery College, I can make them excited. I have, at least. Put it that way.
Uh, do schools look for first generation students?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And first generation means that their mother has not gone and their father has not gone and has not gone in the United States. I mean, if they've gone, excuse me, I'll say that, if they've gone to college in another foreign country, that's not first gen. First gen is that they have never, ever been on a college campus or have a degree. That's first gen.
All right, I think that's it.
That's it.
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I hope I answered a lot of questions, and my email's there, Jeremy's is there. And again, we'll send out those lists to you. And if you want to listen to the presentation again, be my guest. Happy to help you, and I appreciate you coming.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great night.